Welcome to the Ravit Show.
Hi, Ravit. I'm so excited to be here with you and the audience. Thank you for having me on.
It's such a pleasure to have you. Definitely, it was a no-brainer to host you in the Ravit Show because I know we've been talking since a while now, and then obviously we've been connected on LinkedIn since like forever. But then, who better than you to share about the tech landscape, about the past, present, and future, about what's coming up next, but in general as well about the leadership in the data space. It's such an important topic to talk about. So, again, it's such a pleasure to have you on your. I was telling the folks about the giveaway. So, those who are already typing Dora, they already know why. So, Dora, thanks for offering a one-on-one session with one person who's attending, and those who will actually type in hashtag Dora. They'll get a one-on-one coaching session with Dora, and you can talk anything around data leadership, or if you're facing any issues navigating your career in data, Dora will be happy to help. So type in hashtag Dora, and towards the end of the show, we'll be picking up one winner, and you get a chance to meet Dora and learn from her and the experience she has. I'm happy that I could spend some time behind the scenes with Dora. So thanks again, Dora. But to start with, I'm pretty sure the audience would love to learn more about who you are, where you're coming from. So can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you very much. Let me just start by saying I love your show. I've been listening for such a long time. I'm honored to be on here. Everybody, thank you for joining as well. So I'm Dora Boussias. I think, long time in this space, over 28 and a half years, and I usually round it up to 30 because it's so close right now. But I've been really in IT for close to 30 years. I play pretty much every role that you can think of in IT. So data has always been part of what I do, and I've done software programming and data development engineering, DBA, program project management. For the past 20 or so years, I've worked a lot in the enterprise architecture space. But again, all along, data has been a common thread. That being said, and even though I got about 30 years in technology, it's important for me, and I think that's something for all of us to keep in mind, that first and foremost, how am I helping the business? So I'm always thinking about how what I'm doing in tech and with data is actually helping my business do better. How can I help my patients or my customers, depending the industry that I work in? How can I make my business a healthier business? So I'm business-minded,
right,
technology and data professional. And obviously right now I work for a wonderful organization, which is Stryker in medical technology. To be clear, I don't speak on behalf of Stryker. I speak on behalf of myself, anything I'm about to say here. But it's a wonderful organization. And my current role, I drive data strategy and architecture at the global level for Stryker, which again, MedTech, $18 billion company, 50,000 employees. And well, let me just say this as well in terms of introduction. Other than MedTech and healthcare, I've had experience a little bit in retail early on, education, insurance, and then a lot also in financial services. I spent 9+ years for G Capital. So that's in a nutshell my background.
Yeah, I love it. And definitely with years of experience, we've always learned a lot from your content. The talks you've done through years, obviously, it's always been a pleasure listening to you. I'm pretty sure the audience would love to learn a lot from you today as well. I already see a few questions coming in, but just a comment here from George Frickin. He says, Dora, how cool is it to have your own hashtag? Which I think, yes. I wish I could.
Sure, that's right.
I wish I could have my own hashtag too someday, maybe at a show. But
that's you do, Ravit.
So to start with, obviously, I'm kind of curious to learn about how do you strike the right balance between innovation and practicality when implementing data and AI solutions in an organization. I'm pretty sure there's always, where you're in the middle. So how do you look at that?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm thinking of it in terms of, like you said, AI and data solutions, because there's a lot of
Right.
the traditional data and tech solutions, and then there's AI solutions. But well, how do I strike a balance between innovation and practicality? I actually think of it in terms of short term and long term, because I think I can be
Hmm.
innovative and practical at the same time. So
Right.
it's more about how do I strike a balance for what I need right now, what the organization needs right now. But for me, it's always very important that what we build right now actually sustains and it's resilient. So I think of it that way, and what helps me is really thinking about what is the business problem that I'm trying to solve, really,
Hmm.
um, and how can I make sure that I'm solving for now, but I'm setting up the foundation for the future. I'm building for now what I need now, but the design, the architecture of it is there really to sustain for the future, and I think that helps me really balance that short long term. Now, in terms of innovation versus practicality, I just want to say this too. We do a lot in terms of just bringing in new things, building new things. Sometimes,
Right.
we can actually be innovating by taking some things out of the process to simplify it and still reach
Wow.
our. So, that can be innovative and yet
Yeah.
practical. I help us get to that solution faster. So it all starts with me, and it helps me get to those answers by thinking, what exactly am I trying to solve? Who has a pain point? What is that pain point? What can they not do in their day-to-day business?
Hmm.
Or what opportunity are they trying to generate for the organization? That's my North Star in terms of thinking about the balance there.
Yeah. No, I think this is like the approach I think most of the enterprise leaders and even other leaders should have, like in terms of understanding how to not overcomplicate things. Like that's how you view it at a 360-degree level, where okay, how can we make it as simple as it is for the data teams to understand and even the customers. So that makes a lot of sense. So thanks for that, Dora. Also, we have a lot of questions coming in from audience. I'm kind of just for our audience, I'm making sure that I'm putting a star to it, and I'll be taking all the questions. But your first question I can take from George. So George is asking, any thoughts on parallels between growing a garden and a data culture? So interesting
George,
one.
George, thank you for joining. Thank you for the question. I'm really bad with remembering names, but we know there is even a book. I forget the name of the person.
The
Apologies.
guy, I had
Wrote
the same book.
You have the same book. I'm so bad with remembering names. But yes, there's parallels between growing a garden and data culture, and there's a whole book that talks about it. But just like with the data culture, with the data garden, before you get the labels of your fruit, of your garden, you have to put a lot of effort in it. I think there is a lot of there is a method to the madness, as I like to say sometimes, especially with the data culture, has a lot to do, I think, with just transforming our culture. Because when we're talking about these things and getting to a data culture that it's more data driven in practice and getting to agile types of solutions, and being able to scale, I think we need to be thoughtful about it, just like when we think about the gardener and we're working with tilling the soil and putting in the seeds and waiting for it to actually grow and give us fruit. It's the same thing. It's not going to happen overnight. So I would say, George, the easiest parallel is like, don't expect to shift a whole culture to become more of what we want it to be these days, just overnight. It takes effort and being intentional about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I was just searching for the name, and I think it was Joe, who's the founder of Data Garden. But there's a book on it as well, I remember, and I had
So
that
lady
book.
too that wrote something about it, and I'm so bad with names. I'm sorry. I should look about it after the fact, but yes.
Yeah, very interesting. Thanks for that question, George. And obviously, coming back to something that obviously I'm kind of very curious to learn is if you can summarize like top lessons from the trenches that support getting the most from implementing transactional or analytical data, and AI technology solutions. This is something that I would, I'm kind of very curious to learn from you, definitely.
Thank you, Ravit. Almost 30 years, like I said, I've been part of many different projects and programs, worked with a lot of different people, a lot of different technologies. George and some other folks might know I started as a global mainframe programmer back in the day.
Yep.
But it was several months ago that I tried to organize all of that, and I said, if I were to summarize it, what are like four? I came up with four very key lessons. If I were to summarize,
Yep.
There's much detailing there, but I came up with four key lessons, and these are not new. People have heard about these before, but for some reason we keep forgetting them. The first one, especially, because I still see so much people just really gravitating to the technology. So yeah, no surprise here, but it's an important lesson that no technology is the silver bullet, is what I would say is my number one lesson, that I feel that we have to keep on breaking down as part of the conversation. Think about the business and what am I trying to solve? Don't think that technology will just solve our problems. So lesson number one for me is technology is really now the silver bullet. But lesson number two is a little bit different. And it's not about anything to do with technology. It has to do with the people and how we work and what we're going for. And that is that it is extremely critical to have a clear and shared purpose. So clarity and purpose that it's shared, it is critical for us to have resilient solutions.
Right.
Resilient solutions. I've been part of, again, cross industries, cross teams, so many efforts where we build something and check, we meet our goal. And then a few months later, everything just breaks, or even right away. But in some cases, it takes a little bit, depending the data comes through, the scenario that is hitting the system, it breaks. And then we start putting Band-Aids, or then it cannot scale. Why? Because, part of it is that we did not have a clear purpose. We built something and we did not have a shared and clear purpose, which means there's different requirements coming in. So then it breaks, or it cannot actually meet the capabilities that we are trying to solve for the organization. So a shared, clear purpose is really critical for us to really deliver resilient solutions for the organization. Is my second lesson. It's also taking a lot longer when we don't have that clarity and that common purpose, because then we're going around in circles thinking about what it is that we're trying to build. But that brings me to the third key lesson, which is, as much as we want to, because it would make things so much easier, we just cannot skip over change. For us to have a common, shared, and clear purpose, it means we have to work together. And I don't mean usually, the team of something that we're trying to build, but especially, and I work a lot with data and I work a lot with master data as well. Even understanding, even if it's not master data, even if it's, defining KPIs at the enterprise level, even if it's defining what sales means, what a customer means, what's a product hierarchy,
right.
We just cannot skip over the fact that we need to bring people together from the different functions and the different divisions to come together, to work together, to really start speaking the same language and go through that. Well, that's change, because other than getting it conceptually and even if we conceptually get to the definitions and start speaking the same language, then we have to practice the same language, which means we need to change our day-to-day habits. The process day-to-day might change, the systems that we work with, the steps that we take. And the truth of the matter is, if we really want to thrive as an organization, especially in this time and age, global organizations, we might be wanting to operate at the local level, but how do we make sure that for the right things, we drive those synergies that need to be at the enterprise level? Well, that means we have to come together. That means we need to change in some aspects how we think and how we operate every day. And we just can't skip over that. And even if everything is great inside, the industry out there changes. So you can't skip over change. That's my other big lesson. And what I've learned is that when we work together really and we embrace that and we go into it with an open mind to embrace it and figure out how we do that together, we actually go further, faster together. When we're fighting it, like if you fight it, you know what? It's kind of like I'm at a train station, the train is going to leave regardless if I get on it or not. So might as well get on that train, embrace, change is going to happen. We are going to go further, faster together. That's something that's very, very, very well and alive in my brain. And I drive with that even as I work with my stakeholders on my team.
Yeah.
That's 3. I have one more.
4th.
The last one, and I see that we actually fall in that trap. And that probably is ingrained in my mind because I've had roles of an enterprise visibility and accountability for so long right now, thinking end-to-end, having an end-to-end mindset. Sometimes I speak with teams and they say, oh yeah, we're doing data, we're doing enterprise data management, we're doing these enterprise things, we define them at the enterprise. And enterprise means, all of the teams within this business unit, or even all of the business units with this division. But if you're talking about enterprise master data, wouldn't you want to define your product hierarchy the same if you're this division or that division or the other division, or if you're in different regions? But even more than that, a different aspect to it. End-to-end means that if I'm building something here right now, there's always downstream impact. And something that we do, I think we gravitate towards is forgetting who's downstream that might need what I create here. We're trying to answer, there's a question that comes, we're trying to understand it and try to build for it. But sometimes we forget that outside of the confines of the scope that we have, our scope is to build this. However, when we think about what we need to build and we design it, we typically forget, well, who else is going to need this? I gave this example once. We might be doing something on the CRM, right? Say the Salesforce might need something, we're putting it on CRM, we're building it. But then we forget sometimes to say, well, who else is going to need this data? Are they going to need to report on something? It's another team, 3-4 steps down the process.
Right.
Maybe what they need is something about the diversity of the customers or the data that we're capturing. Maybe also we need to incorporate like a diversity indicator for that customer or that supplier, whatever it is that we're doing. Well, if we don't ask the question 2-3 steps outside the scope of what I'm building, who else is going to need this, and don't have that end-to-end mindset, we're going to build something that later we might have to go and rewire the underneath model, if you will, or architecture, both data and technology architecture, because we just did not really think through everything. To make it simple, I'll just give this one analogy that I like because I think it resonates with people. When I want to build a house, I may need only the first floor, ground floor this year, but I know that in a couple of years, my kids and grandkids might want to come and I'm going to need a second floor. I'm not going to build it now. I'm going to build it next year.
Wow.
But I need to know this because and think about that end-to-end mindset, because that changes how strong my foundation, that changes perhaps how strong an AC unit I install or where the pipes inside the walls go, because I need to design and think about who else is going to need what I'm putting here. I'm going to need a second floor. So have that end-to-end mindset.
Yeah, no, I think these are great points, and definitely I love the analogy too in terms of, building a great foundation. But obviously, all the top lessons that you've shared talk about multi-cloud, resilience, working together, and end-to-end. Yeah, I think it kind of all makes sense to, obviously your years of experience kind of speak for itself, and that's one of the reasons you could come up and tell us about all these 4 lessons that kind of makes more sense. One curious question in terms of when we talk about the end-to-end bit, and when you mentioned also, you have to think about how it will affect the downstream when you're building something. So do you think that obviously kind of brings me to something that we all have been talking and listening a lot around is data products. So do you think it kind of directly, when creating a data product, it matters a lot, thinking about the end-to-end lesson that you've just spoken about?
I think just the fact that we call it a product, yes. If we want this to be a product, I mean, think about the stuff that we're going to buy, right? When I buy a product, I want this pen to actually work for me for all of the different reasons that I need it for, right?
Right.
So if I don't think of this end to end, and I only think that, hey, I just need to be able to, I don't know, write in blue, but I want to also be able to close this because when I put it in my purse, I don't want the pen to
Right.
go away, right? So if I
True.
don't think about end to end, what are the different aspects that I want to build in this? It's a product. So same thing with data products. Data product typically means that we're getting data from a lot of different sources. We're combining transactional data with master enterprise data, reference data, perhaps external data, right? To get like a semantically makes sense. It's a logical thing. It's something that I can look at, and end to end, it's a product that I can use. And then as a data product, I can
Right.
slice it, I can dice it, I can get insights from it, I can feed another transactional process with it, the different reasons. So exactly. If I don't think end to end holistically and all of the different uses, then how am I going to successfully create a product? Now, I just want to make a point though here too, because I don't want people to misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm not saying build everything. I'm not saying take forever. I'm saying take a moment to ask the question and say, okay, if this is what I'm trying to build, high level. I'm not saying take weeks, months, years to figure out what anything and everybody wants to do. We have to balance the short and the long term. So do
Right.
good enough. Ask the question to get good enough, right? Not perfect even, but good enough information to say, yes, I understand what I need to build. So I need to design it this way. I'm going to build for what I need right now. But when I design it, when I build the foundation, it is going to be scalable. When next year I want to build that second floor, yep, I don't have to, take out all the plumbing or electrical and make it stronger or reposition it from that wall to that wall because of the
Right.
design the second floor would be, right? So that's all I mean. Ask the question, understand who else might need this data. What are they going to do with it? What is the purpose that they need it for, right? Those are some questions to ask so that we can design it in a way that it can actually sustain, but build for what we need right now and then iterate, build more later and build more later. But it's not going to be a house of cards that's going to crumble as you start building, adding more functionality to your solution.
Yeah, I love it. In terms of obviously, understanding and making sure, if you know the purpose for what you're building, it will go a long way and it will help a lot, a lot of working generations as well, like and the teams as they grow. So it all makes sense, Dora. I have another question, and I promise to our audience that I know there are a lot of questions from the audience. I'll be taking that after after this question. So you spoke about obviously about these lessons, but can you also give us some tangible examples, like how to apply that into practice, in also perhaps things that teams should always strive to do or avoid, or maybe things teams tend to forget and should keep a pulse on? What, any thoughts around that?
If my mother could understand English and could hear me right now, she'd be happy to know that what I drove her crazy with when I was a kid, it's actually helping right now. I was always a very curious person. And I think it comes, so curiosity and asking questions, I found is the way to go for a lot of things. So for this one, how do we apply this? It is through asking some very intentional questions. So it's almost like, and some of the stuff I've already mentioned, but how do I make sure that those core lessons, we take them into consideration? And it starts with not, go implement AI because that's what everybody's talking about. Go implement LLM or go, create a data lake because, that's what we need to do, right? But also the question of what is the business pain point? Or what is that opportunity that I'm trying to do for business?
Yeah.
I know we say it all over, and yet we keep falling in the trap of not asking the question or asking the question on the surface and not really getting to the bottom of it. So I would say ask that question. What is it that how am I trying to, what purpose for? What am I trying to solve for the business? Then I would say, connecting it back to the second shared clear purpose, then I would ask the question, well, that need, do we all understand it clearly and consistently? Do we all understand it the same? How else are we going to have a common purpose if we don't make sure that we do understand it the same? And, communication comes in here a little bit, and we're not, by default, I don't think most of us are great communicators. So being specific and asking, taking the time to ask that question, I think that helps. But then after we ask the question, I would say, ask another question. Well, is it all of us? It goes back to that end-to-end mindset, right? If I'm trying to build something from here, and I've asked, say, my team, is there another team that would leverage this, that needs this? We need to incorporate them as well, right? So what is the business problem? Do we all understanding clearly and consistently? Is all of us that we need? Is there other relevant stakeholders that during this stage right now, earlier on, we have to involve in? And then I would say just do like a check. Did we fall back into the trap of only talking about technology? We're still early on, we're still trying to understand here the need, the requirement, the business need. There are many different reasons using technology that we can solve for. I don't want to go straight to technology. I don't want to say I need a hammer, because maybe I don't need a hammer for my business problem. Maybe it's a screwdriver that I need. So did we start talking about technology again? Are we talking about a hammer, or are we talking about, well, it's a nail that I'm trying to put on the wall versus it's a screw that I need to put here? We can bring in the right technology solution as long as we really understand the problem. So ask that question, because it's very easy for us to fall into that trap. Did we fall into the trap of talking technology again? And then what is the relevant data that we need? What is the relevant data that we need? From a data, end-to-end data management perspective, we carry around so much data. Sometimes I've heard people say, hey, build me a data lake, bring me all of the data. And then in those cases, I ask the question, pretend you have all of the data. Pretend you have all the data on the wall. What are you going to do with it? So what? Which goes back to, what problem are you trying to solve, and what do you really need? Because when we are focusing on what we really need for our challenge, and we get the relevant data, then we can backtrack from there and really focus our efforts on working with the right stakeholders, with the right data, and not going cycles, not process a whole lot of data that we might not need. Now, that may be different, a little bit different when we're dealing with big data and AI, but either way, you don't want to be looking for a needle in a haystack. You want to be deliberate and focused. This is what we're trying to solve for. And then the last question I would say, we talked a little bit about it. Who needs this downstream? Anyone else? Again, when we thought about what upstream that comes with a need is asking for, and we incorporated that in the design. Okay, anyone else downstream? Because usually we're working on something because somebody's asking for something. That's upstream.
Right.
Let's not forget to ask, okay, downstream, anybody else? If yes, okay, what do they need? High level, good enough. We don't have to go into nosing, we're just trying to understand if there's any big gotchas in the design of our solution. So I think these are some practical questions to ask to help us make sure that we're staying aligned with those, 4 key lessons that at least I've experienced and learned in my career.
Yeah. I think these are definitely super interesting, Dora, and thanks for sharing all the insights. I know for a fact where there are a few overlaps in the questions that we have already got, but let's take a few questions here. So this is one of my favorite questions as well. So do you think CEOs are feeling more pressure in introducing AI into their organization's environment? That is so true. I feel like, still want to hear your thoughts.
George, I love the question. Thank you. Yeah, I think so. Because there's so much buzz out there, and I think it happens every time with buzz, right? Whatever buzzword du jour, so to speak, right? So this day it's all about LLMs actually within AI. Actually, I think it was your podcast I was listening to, one of your sessions, Ravit, when somebody said, or maybe it was at another one, I forget. Somebody said, you know, AI used to be machine learning. Now AI is being thought of, or maybe that was another one. Now AI is LLMs, right? So what AI means, but yes, I think the pressure is there. I agree, because there's just so much talk about it. But of course, you know, there is ways to go about it. And I don't know if we're even going to get a question. What do we do? Do we just go ahead and do it? How do we do it? That might be another question to think about.
Yep. Okay. So that was a good one. But again, something again around. So we know the buzz around AI, and that's why we have so many questions around AI as well. Let's take this one. All right. So I'm just picking up. Here we go. So I know, Dora, you mentioned already a few of those implementation challenges, but do you have any thoughts around how do you overcome them? Just in
Key
terms
challenges,
of them.
yeah.
Yep.
Key challenges is that there isn't always clarity. Key challenges is that we're trying to just do say machine learning without really understanding the problem, and then and sometimes we speak differently up here, but then the people doing the actual hands-on work, sometimes they go in circles because they don't know where to get the data. Is this the right data? What am I really trying to solve for? I'm trying to do this, you know, machine learning or this code for traditional, you know, for other traditional solutions as well. And sometimes we go in circles. It's vague, but we keep on going. We're going through the motions. Sometimes I've seen that being a challenge, but I've also seen the challenge, especially for the stuff that I drive, which I'm coming more from, hey, how do I drive synergies for my enterprise, my organization, is just the pushback. The data culture question that George Ferrecan asked before, right, is the pushback, excuse me, to change in terms of, yeah, we have to come together, work together for some of these things, because there are dependencies where you're thinking end-to-end. And because to drive synergies, we do have to start thinking, speaking the same language. So the challenge there is just the pushback. Yep. The other challenge, depending at different layers, is that in my experience in this, it's a lot easier to get through, I think, when you're talking about technology. When I'm speaking about the things that I'm speaking about, and it's not always easy, especially on the data management side of things, to see the benefit right away in a way people are used to seeing the benefit. In other words, unless somebody says, here's a technical solution that I implemented, it might take a little, you know, it's a different kind of effort early on to say, hey, who are my stewards? How do we work together? What is the repeatable model to make sure that we are focusing on the right data? How I figure out what's the right data for my organization, right? So it's harder to see the benefit of that early on. So the challenge sometimes is that it's a constant, you know, you have to keep on answering the question, why should we invest in this? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Why should we invest in this? Why don't I invest in technology and I invest in this? Okay, I mean, this includes technology as well. But I think it's hard sometimes for executive leadership to understand that, you know, it's different from what we've been used to. So we have to keep on making the point about what are we doing this for, which is all good and we can do it. But being resilient, because this is a multifaceted journey really to drive that data culture that I was referring to. It takes resiliency. So you got to have the right people in the right roles for this. If you don't have the right people in the right roles, the challenge is that your program can only go so far.
Yeah. Okay. Those are interesting insights. Good points, Dora. Thanks for sharing those. Another quick question here from YouTube. So how do we manage stakeholders that doesn't really know exactly what problem they are trying to solve, but asking the data team to build something without a clear path, which happens like with many data teams that I've also come across. But Dora, we would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Actually, I gave a talk about this a couple of different years at a conference. It was something that I had packaged as the business data purpose mindset. And really, how do you manage stakeholders? We're going to get into some different things here, but the way that I think is the best way to get past this challenge is, first of all, try to understand what is their pain point, and try to be an active listener and try to build the trust and credibility, and ask questions about the business purpose and the business problem. But like I said earlier, not just on the surface, right? Actively listen and participate in the conversation. Hear what the other person is going for, but then don't stop there. Be curious as a business analyst or a data analyst, for example. Be curious and get the person engaged, constantly thinking from their perspective and try to understand what is their problem. That way, you can come back commenting and asking questions that will resonate with that person. So together, through the very active conversation, can get down, help that business stakeholder to get down to the bottom of it. The way to do that, again, is through asking the right questions. But to ask the right questions, you have to be the active listener, and you have to always be thinking from the aspect of, like, ask those 5 whys, but not like why. You got to get comfortable with saying, okay, how are we going to use this? Why is this an issue? What if we weren't doing that? What purpose, right? And speak about it in terms of business value. Get the conversation out of the technical. The technical will come later. We'll figure out if it's a screwdriver or a hammer that we need. Again, try to understand this and try to help them get down to the bottom of it by making them think about, well, what am I really trying to solve for? Go back to the so what. If I had all of the data in my data lake, so what? What am I going to do with it? Right? So again, if you're trying to build something here and you don't have a clear path, being curious and engaging and looking at it from the other stakeholders' perspective is how I found is the best way to help get to the bottom of it and work with our stakeholders.
Definitely. And it also kind of goes back to obviously what you mentioned earlier, just in the start of the show itself, where it's about making it less complicated than more, as far as, ask yourself those questions about what are the things which are not required, even in a data stack or anywhere, so you can actually make it less complicated. So I agree with all the points, Dora. Thanks for sharing it. It's definitely very helpful. Yeah.
Hey, Ravit, I just want to add something else here too, as I'm saying all of this. And even when I said, hey, we have to work together, and it relates a little bit to the last question. Make it like a partnership, right? Again, this is a dialogue. Recognize that the business folks have a lot of value to bring the conversation. The technical and data folks have a lot of value to build that conversation. Unfortunately, I still hear of stories, situations, teams where it's I'm telling you what you're doing, where technology teams or data teams are already teams. Get out of that. This is a partnership. I'm an IT person, but like I said, I'm a business-minded person. I'm business too, right? We're all here. What is our North Star? What is our common purpose? We're trying to do this for the organization or the customer, right? Or the patient, depending on what we're doing. So we're partners in this together. So I would say, try to bring more of that vibe, if you will, and that way of working together, those aspects in the culture, rather than tell me what you need and I'll go do it. I don't understand. I'm asking you when the other person says, oh, just go do it. What do you mean you don't understand? We need to build that trust, that credibility, that rapport with respect for each other and partnering with each other. And I know that's not a lot of other technology, but it's key. It's key. And those are the kinds of things that we haven't been paying as much attention to.
Yeah. Awesome. These are good points. Thanks, Benebo, for the question as well. One another quick question here from Jonathan. So how do we sell solutions in data and AI to people when they don't understand data, AI, computer science, etc., where traditional methods are so fixed into the day job that change is the real challenge, and it's so embedded that people believe more in instinct than the data, which is true again. So how do you tackle that type of problem, Dora?
So I think there's different aspects to this. The very first thing that comes to mind is remember with them, what's in it for them. If they think there's something in it for them, it will be easier for you to sell that solution. So figure out What are they having a hard time? What are they getting frustrated when they're doing the jobs and they're asking you for something, or you think you can help by bringing in a new process, a new technology, a new solution? Right. You'll be able to make better points when you relate it to how it's going to help that other person. So always ask, what's in it for them, right? And by the way, the same solution, how I speak about it and how I sell it, so to speak, to my finance stakeholders versus my marketing stakeholder versus my operationals or my sales, even though it could be the same overall solution, it's slightly different exactly because I try to answer and I try to relate it to what's in it for them, which puts the onus on me to understand if I really want to sell it. The onus is on me then to understand enough to ask the intelligent questions to the marketing person versus the finance person versus the operations person that's relevant to them. So that's one. Another way I think is, and I've said this before, is, and there's different layers to this, right? Have the right folks in the right people, the right skill set, right people in the right roles. If you're trying to sell something smaller, is it part of a bigger strategy? Who's selling that strategy? I've seen situations where great people, great operational managers had the job to sell what we're trying to do in data. Well, it only went so far because their strength was execution of things every day, not communicating in a way that it gets the executives excited to understand the value they're going to get out of it. So you got to have the right skill set in the right role. Right. Sorry, I'm thinking about all different layers here, but those are definitely two ways that help. Try to find a champion, by the way, pilot it, show quick value, find a champion that can speak for you. That will help you sell it to more people and make more out of it. I mean, if we're talking about a bigger thing, make sure you get your executive support. It depends on what level you're asking that question to, right?
And also, I kind of feel the partnerships in these types of areas kind of help a lot. Like everywhere, it's more around the partnership where you have internally people who can, help you around with even making things understood internally too in the data teams itself. So yeah, for sure, Dora, those are good points. One quick question here from Emma. Emma is joining us from Paris. So welcome, Emma. In medical equipment and medical field globally, how to ensure we can safely use AI? AI can be powerful, but also rarely provide 100% accuracy, which might present a safety risk. So, any thoughts around that, Dora?
I think with AI, and look, I was in a leadership roundtable with folks representing different industries, including healthcare, recently. And I'll give you a little bit of insight and I'll connect it to the question. There was a couple of survey questions, and here's how people answered it. Everybody's excited about AI and LLMs. But also, the other thing that came out of that tidbit here is that everybody's also a little bit skeptical about it, probably for the reasons that you're talking about here, Ahmed, right? And, it's safety risk in med tech, or it could be other risk, right, for other industries as well. Where I think we are is that we're early on. There is a lot of hype right now. And I think the very first thing to do is educate, does the organization have some guidelines, for example? Who are the people that are the most knowledgeable, and is there a function that looks at this? I don't know if that's privacy, if that's legal, if that's security, whoever that is, if it's a data office, right? Put some guidelines in place. Start educating people, first of all, because we all know of the examples of, Russian using the LLM, ChatGPT or other LLM models out there and leaking confidential information, or because we don't realize this is there to help us jumpstart, you still have to validate the answers you get. You can't just take it for granted, or it might pose a safety risk, right, for the people, and it might also pose a legal risk for the organization, right? So how do we ensure? I would say realize there is a lot of hype. I would say start with some guidelines, start educating folks, And I think it's just going to be a journey. We're all learning as we go through it, by the way. It's not like I have all the answers, but I do believe that to begin with, we have to start as an organization, who are the right folks, to start putting some guidelines, some guardrails, some guidance for how we can use this technology.
Very important. That's very true. And thanks for sharing that. Good question, Emma. One another question here from George himself. But before taking that, obviously, it's time for us. I know audience has been waiting. So just a quick reminder for those who've joined us late. We are happy that we could do this type of giveaway where you get 1 hour of one-on-one coaching session on anything that you want to talk about, around data, leadership, around your career in data with Dora. So feel free to put a hashtag Dora in the chat. And after this question, we'll be doing the draws. So your last chance. Looking forward to that. Also, Emma puts out a message here. Very clear indeed. Safety critical systems will require more education, thorough due to diligence. So
thank you, Ahmed. And I want to just say, you know, I love it when there's engagement from the audience. Thank you for the questions, everybody, because then we can discuss. It's not, look, I'm not here pretending that I have all of the answers for everything. This is a conversation, right? So how do we learn from each other and pull on our expertise, all of us? So love it when the audience is asking questions so we can talk about what's on everybody's mind.
And exactly, being a host out here as well, like from day one, what I always mention is if you bring on questions, which are pretty interesting, I can get on my questions, like the things that I have in back of my mind or what I listen or what I hear from the community, I'll definitely be asking those questions. But these questions are more from different angles and it makes, it covers a good ground as well. So thanks, audience, again for asking questions. Definitely. Let's take this one from George. So what is one of the lessons that you wished you have learned earlier in your career that those starting out could benefit from? Very interesting.
George, such an awesome question. Okay. I think there's a couple, but I think the number one lesson, if I could go back early on, we are in technical and data fields, right? We work a lot with technology. We underestimate the power of communication. So the lesson that I wish I learned earlier on is understanding that communication is important and how people get to a conclusion is different. So the different pathways that happen in my brain before I answer a question, how I get to that, how I understand something that George, you know, you might say, or that we're talking about our work with our stakeholders is different than how anybody else understands it. So for me, understanding that everybody else comes from a different perspective, really listening actively, and then making sure that I invest in my own development in terms of effectively communicating, that's something that I wish I had understood earlier on in my career, especially in our field. Especially in our field, it's all about technology, data, processes. I've said this before, it all goes back to people. We can't get rid of the human factor, and how we work with each other is through communication. So that's important. That's the thing that I would have invested more time earlier on in my career.
Yep, that's so true. You know, people say that, oh, soft skill. I don't think it should even be called soft skill. It should actually be called something as a must that you should obviously keep in mind, even when you're getting into this type of field, because like you said, nothing better than saying it in that clear words where it comes back to people and communication. So keep that in mind. I think that's a very good point that you've made, Dora. So thanks for that. Now it's time. We were waiting for this, and let's do the giveaway. And this is a cool way for those folks who've typed in hashtag Dora. We do this cool raffle where automatically there'll be a winner picked up. So no rigged. It's not rigged, guys. It will automatically be picked. Let's see who the winner is. It's Daksh Khinwasra. Congratulations, Daksh. From YouTube, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'll connect you with Dora. And anything around data leadership, if you are in early stage of your career, Dora will be happy to help you, and you can ask her the questions around that. But Dora, this was pretty amazing. I think we still have so many questions in there.
I haven't even touched everything I had in mind to speak about, but this is so great. I love the conversation and the questions. And I'm so
Exactly.
honored for everybody that joined and engaged. Thank you so much. Ravit,
It
thank you.
was it was so much fun, Dora. Definitely, I can't wait to do a 2.0 session with you, where obviously things will also kind of move very quickly in, like, in the AI world, and even in our data world. It's like every third day there's something new that comes up, and there's so much to talk about, so much to learn, so much to consume in terms of the content as well. But thanks for taking the time out, thanks for sharing all the details, thanks for getting into the bits of the data, AI. The lessons that you shared are pretty amazing, and looking forward to definitely doing more of this, and can't wait to invite you for a 2.0 session, where I'm pretty sure the audience would be super happy to learn about new things that might have come up, or even from your experiences. I think I don't think we've even covered like a bit of it. There's so much we could talk more about, but definitely looking forward to doing this more. And also thanks to our audience for asking so many questions out there.
It's been a lot of fun. Thanks again to everyone, and I'll be happy to come back, Ravit. Thank you so much for having me on. Love
Awesome.
this.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was such a pleasure to have you, Dora. Thank you, everyone, for